This episode of Tutia Bruja is sponsored by Floodwitch, dedicated to providing information that helps you build an ethical witchcraft practice by raising marginalized voices while reclaiming weird. This is Floodwitch. Check it out at floodwitch.com.
I can see you clearly. What's up, y'all? You're listening to Tutia Bruja. I'm Bex Carlos, your host. This is episode 10. Thanks for listening. So for today's episode, I'm airing it a little later than expected. I am really excited because our guest, Nina Blanco, is turning 30 this weekend. It's her dirty 30. What's up? What's up? Backstory on her. We've been friends since she was a radio personality here in St. Louis. We actually didn't like each other at first, but we've grown to love each other. I don't know. It's just a reminder that sometimes when there isn't a lot of representation of women of color in the industry, they become competitive. But Nina's great, love her to death. And I think that a lot of people, were reflecting on who we are. And that's kind of what we did this episode. We talked about ghosts and our experiences with how to deal with spirits. Just kind of reflecting on the past, her living here, different experiences she had with spirits. So here's my conversation with Nina Blanco. A friend of mine who used to live in St. Louis. Nina Blanco, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. How exciting.
I know. And it's funny because, I don't really consider you a witch. You've had spiritual experiences.
Yeah, most definitely.
Sometimes even if you don't embrace the term, I think that, some people are just predispositioned to experience that kind of stuff. You lived in St. Louis and you lived downtown. When you lived here, did you experience any paranormal or weird stuff?
Thinking back, I don't think I ever did personally in St. Louis. I think at that point, which we can talk more about this part of it, but I try my best to stay away. Like ghosts and spirits and things like that. And in St. Louis, I definitely had the mindset that okay, I'm doing good. Haven't had any encounters recently because of, my made up mindset. And I didn't experience anything while I was living there.
The power of the mind is really strong. So even if there was something, it's very possible to just be like, no. I'm someone who's experienced this stuff all my life. And for me, pretending that it wasn't there hurt me. I understand that there's the other side where people just are like, I don't want to deal with it. It's not for me.
Yeah.
When I was 8, I want to say, my mom had me watch The Exorcist. And me being 8 years old, I'm like, I don't want anything bad to happen to me.
Right, exactly.
I think that movie is the most major portrayal of what can happen to you because she's playing with a Ouija board.
Seriously, no thank you.
I don't play with them anymore because they do kind of freak me out now. And I remember that there was a classmate who had some strange kind of stuff surrounding his death. And I remember asking, is this how you died? Is there something we should know about how you died? Fast forward to maybe 11 years later, and I'm in a conversation with somebody, and this guy comes up. And for some reason, it's revealed that some of the details around his death were not as they seemed.
Okay.
It was kind of a tragic accident, but it was covered up to look like something else.
Ooh.
It's this thing that I hadn't thought about in a really long time. And I was talking to this guy, and I was just like, why did this come up? And he was like, I don't know. For some reason, I just thought about it. And for me, that felt like a sign that even though it was 11 years after the fact that I had asked, is there anything kind of going on here? And the more that I started to get into witchcraft, the more I started to get answers to things that I was just thinking I would never get the answer to.
Yeah, it's super bizarre when things kind of come up and pop into your mind, and then you kind of link it to, well, it could have been something spiritual talking to you, and you're like, ooh.
So honestly, it's not strange that The Exorcist, the movie that was so terrifying, was inspired by events here. So I'm going to link in the show notes of my friend Cody, who gives a really great account of everything.
Yeah, St. Louis, haunted AF.
You live in Soulard, specifically. There's the market that's right there, and been a lot of fires.
Yeah, I know. One of the buildings that I lived in Soulard, it was one of the historical buildings. To the point my landlord had trouble fixing my front door because he wasn't allowed to touch it because it was a historical building. Mentally just tried to ignore everything. That's what I still do. So there probably were some things that I just missed.
Well, okay, so I guess Why do you prefer, like, have you had an experience that was so bad or really just frightened you where you're just kind of like, no, thank you?
Yes. And a lot of these experiences came from when I was a kid. And I've always kind of felt like I could feel if there is a presence of some sort. And it scares me. I think it's because a lot of it is like the unknown, and you hear these ghost stories, and there are movies like The Exorcist, and sure, there can be good from it, but there also can be evil from it. And I think that really just scares me. And personally, I'm just not up for that battle. There were several instances when I was a kid. For example, this is like terrifying. I remember I was sleeping over at my aunt's house, hanging out with some cousins, and I specifically remember it was like in the 3 o'clock hour, 3 a.m., waking up, and there was something in front of me, and I could see the eyes. I couldn't describe to you it what it looked like. It was just some sort of a shadow, and I could see the eyes, and I woke up from it, and I don't think I was dreaming. And I just remember hiding under the blankets and being really scared, and it was there, and I was terrified. And I never told anyone because I was just a very shy, quiet, mousy child. But that was, I guess, one of my earlier memories with it. I was probably like, I don't know, 6, 7, 8-ish years old. I've had some other things happen when I was probably like 11. I was with my cousin. She was like our live-in babysitter, and she was in the bathroom. She was straightening her hair, doing her makeup, and I was outside on our deck, and all of a sudden, I was close enough where I could hear from our kitchen, which was right by there was kind of like a peekaboo window, and directly there in the peekaboo window, and it was just her and I at home, all of a sudden, we just heard knocking on the counter. And it wasn't like a faint knocking, like it could be a woodpecker outside the window or something like that. It was straight up in the kitchen, right there. You could narrow down where the sound was coming from on that counter. And it was like violent knocking. It was just, and it wouldn't stop. It wouldn't stop. Scared the shit out of my cousin, scared the shit out of me. We both looked at each other like, what is going on? You're hearing this, you're seeing this, right? And we called my mom and got out of the house and refused to go back in. We had to take a drive for a while. We couldn't go back in the house for a minute, and it was terrifying. I don't know what it was. I don't know where it came from, and it just happened.
I think that's the worst part, when there are like sounds that come with it.
Yeah, I don't like that.
You said, when you don't want to deal with it, you can be like, whatever, I was just staring, I saw a face, like, in the dark.
Yeah.
You can talk yourself out of that stuff.
Right.
But I experienced where something was thrown at me, and that really scared me. So I was in Mexico, and in Mexico, nobody uses tap water. You use like the big like water cooler. And similar to your story where earlier with the 3 a.m., because they do say that 3 a.m. is the witching hour.
Yeah.
Around 3 a.m. is when late at night they would put all the American shows on TV. Teenagers and watching Nip Tuck and just hanging out, my sisters and I. And all of a sudden, the water cooler container that was empty flew at the door. And this is like 3 a.m. So all of us got really scared. We ran up the stairs. We asked my dad to come down. My dad checked the property. Nothing was there. That was scary because, you're just like, I didn't make this up. There's people here. Like, what?
Yeah, especially when you have other people with you that also experience it. You just kind of look at each other like, what in the hell just happened?
Started talking to family members, and then they were like, yeah, I hear like people scratching on the door, and I've heard people calling my name. And it's both wonderful when you have other people to have those experiences with you, because you can be like, okay, it's not me. I'm not crazy. I'm not imagining this.
Right.
But then it's so much scarier.
Yeah, because then it's real. Because then it's actually happening to more than one person. It's valid, it's happening, and it's terrifying.
As an adult now, just because my thought process is now, if I could live down the street from this place that inspired this terrifying movie, and I will say the energy on the street is wild. I think I had told you before that my neighbor died in the apartment next to mine. He had passed, and he had been in there for like a week.
Ooh.
He wasn't very close to his family, I guess, and the only reason that they knew that he passed is because he didn't make it home on Thanksgiving for dinner.
Oh, man.
It was pretty brutal. Rewind a little bit, because we had gone out that weekend to get food, And Toulouse, my cat, who you know, was scratching on the shared wall, like straight up, like scratching.
Oh.
Oh my God, my cat was aware.
He knew. Oh my gosh. See, and like animals have that instinct too. And it's like we gotta sometimes pay attention and listen to animals.
Okay, so this is also why I know that St. Louis is haunted as fuck, because I sensed things, and then when I got Toulouse, it got even worse because he would start to notice things before I did in my apartment before this one.
Was that the one with the basement that had the ghosts in it?
Yes!
That's
Yes!
the
The one where, like,
one. Oh, I don't like it. Ooh. You moved out of there, right?
I did. But now I'm in another one where I've been hanging out for a while. After that happened, when they finally did come and get him, Toulouse was the first one who realized he was there.
Yeah.
He just hung out in my space for a while. One vivid memory I have is like I had rolled a blunt and all of the tobacco like was in the little ashtray, and I left for a little bit and I came back and it was dumped out on my bed. It had been spread on my bed.
Really? Maybe he was an anti-smoker.
Maybe.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy. So you think that, when he passed because he was hanging out for a while, that he came to visit you?
I do. And I also think that because, so here's the thing, the guy had lived in the building for years and his brother lived 2 floors up.
Oh.
Which makes the being in there for a week thing even sadder, in my opinion.
Yeah, man.
So, like, it took a while to get all of his stuff out of there because they were like, well, we can't really rent it right away because, it took them maybe like a year to get everything out.
Wow.
And so, and I mean, like, your stuff carries energy, like if you have your house or, if a family member is to die, a lot of people will say that they still feel them watching over. And a lot of that has to do with their energy still there.
Yeah, interesting.
He's a very persistent spirit. I think he's lonely. The worst part of being next to him, they say that the veil between Halloween and Dia de los Muertos, those 3 days, is like when spiritual activity is the most active.
Yeah.
And I will say, I definitely think that's true because one day I was in that's like my little kitchen area, the wall that we would share, and I was working on a podcast, and for a while I felt someone it was almost like picking up the back of my necklace and dropping it.
Ooh.
And it happened a few times, and I just ignored it. And then I felt like something really cold in the back of my back, and then I felt like it went through my stomach.
What?
I haven't talked to you about all my ghost stuff.
No, you haven't.
I know you don't like it, so I never know. And I'm like, but I convinced you to be on here, so now you get to hear
I know
it.
you did, and the last time that I did like a recording with you to talk about ghost stuff, I literally got out of my house and I did it in my car. This time, because I love you so much, I'm actually in my house, which I'm breaking my own rule right now.
Listen, you're the one here with the power, so if you start to feel bad vibes, get like a pot and a pan and just start clanking them and be like, I'm the witch and you're the bad vibe.
Ooh, okay. Scare him away.
If that doesn't work, then I will personally fly out there.
Sage my shit.
So I can do that for you.
Thank you.
This building has a lot of energy. Like, there's a lot of people who have died in it in a very interesting and mysterious and odd ways. This building was built in the 1920s, though.
Oh, wow.
There's a lot of energy.
Oh, yeah, I bet. I had concerns over my house because it was built in, I think it was 54. It was built in the 50s. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, it's old enough. I feel like there is a possibility. There's always that possibility someone could have died here.
Anything that was built more than 50 years ago, it's like, the likelihood is there.
Yeah, for sure.
I have other family members who have started to really embrace the fact that they do have these gifts because, they are gifts. And, I think for some people it's easier to come to terms with them and have it be part of who you are and not scare you so much. I mean, it is scary. Don't get me wrong. It still scares me when fucking spirits are trying to get my attention and I'm just like, can you stop being so obsessed with me?
Right. Mariah Carey their asses.
I don't know. I also feel for them because it's just not everyone has that ability. So when someone does, you want them to hear you and help you. And it's like, I can barely help myself.
Right. Don't you remember how many problems you had in the alive world? I don't know what it's called.
Listen, y'all, it's only gotten worse.
Yeah.
It's not getting better.
Can we not? No, I've definitely I don't know if I have the gift or maybe I just haven't embraced it and I totally could grow it. But I mean, I still, even to this day, sometimes can feel things. I don't know. You just get a feeling, hey, something might be over there. It's at that corner for some reason is really freaking me out in that room over there, you know? So I feel that. And I don't know if it's necessarily spirits or me just being paranoid or what, but most of the time I do my best to ignore it.
I'm gonna stop talking to you about ghosts because I know that it gets you in a weird spot.
I get scared.
Just salt everywhere.
Okay.
I want to highlight the fact that you've been using your platform. You are someone who gets to reach so many people, and you brought a lot of attention to the fact that you don't necessarily have to be on the front lines.
Yeah.
It's very important to go out and clean up and donate money and really just check people and let them know that they're not on the same team as everybody. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah, I have been doing some volunteer work, part of like, a cleanup crew after, the morning after protests. And I started it the first weekend that the protests broke out. And it was just my way of participating and standing with Black people. They need allies right now. They need people to speak up. We need people to help. We need people to stand with them in the protests. Yes, absolutely. It's just I wasn't 100% comfortable physically being out in the front lines on the protests, only because I didn't have anyone to go with me. I wanted to go so bad, but I didn't have anyone to go with me. I didn't feel safe going alone necessarily. And I was just trying to figure out how I can do my part and help. And I found that volunteering and cleaning up, that's just what I found that I could do to do my part and to help. And it is needed. And it's not anything against protests. It's helping protesters. I think you saw my big, long Instagram and Facebook post about, I'm doing it so that I can pick up the rubber bullets. I know there's going to be more tomorrow, but I'm doing it for you so that there's not glass on the ground. And that way you can demonstrate and you can be there and protest and you can do it safely.
Every part is important. Nobody should have to be put in a situation where they feel uncomfortable, and going alone to a protest is uncomfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. And any large group gathering, whether it be a protest or the city parade for something, but even if you're going to a parade or something like that, anything with large groups of people, like, you shouldn't necessarily go alone just because, you can be split up from a group, something can happen and you don't have people there to support you or help you. And just any large gathering, you really shouldn't go places alone, especially, I guess, being female. But yeah, I just wasn't comfortable with it, and I found something I was comfortable with, and I'm still doing my part to help. So it makes me feel a little bit better.
And we live in a time where we don't always know how to feel, but the best we can do is support Black people and do what we can.
Yeah, absolutely. And showing the Black community that they do have support in, the other people that live in their community with them. It's really important and people need to show up. And there's a lot of resources out there right now that show you ways to do it, whether it be protesting or volunteering for cleanup or so many other things. There are so many things that people can do right now. And I think it's just really cool seeing all the different videos and articles and ways to just show people how they can help. I think that's really important.
Well, Nina, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate you and your time.
Yeah, Bex.
Hopefully this was fun and didn't scare you too much.
No, it didn't scare me too much. Thanks for keeping it PG for me.
I didn't tell you all the terrible things the ghost did.
Right? Also, I know that you've been in my house before. Please don't ever tell me that there are ghosts here. You can just secretly sage the place and throw salt in the corners.
Okay, I will definitely do that.
Because my niece did, and I told her not to expand on that.
But okay, I will say this: every time I've been there, I've never felt anything weird.
Okay, so. Good. That makes me happy.
Where can everybody keep up with you, and what are you up to? How can we support you as well?
You can find me on my social media pages at the Nina Blanco. I am also on the radio in the Denver metro area. If you're around here in Colorado, on 95.7 The Party. You can also just find me on the iHeartRadio app. I also have a podcast. It's called How Did This Happen podcast. And my friend and I, we talk about all sorts of crazy things. So you can look that up as well. How Did This Happen podcast and at the Nina Blanco on all my social channels. That would be cool.
And listen to her podcast because, Nina, I love you, but you get yourself into you have the weirdest stories. So
I have issues and I don't know why. And it just follows me and I'm sorry.
you're a more interesting person. You have all the stories. That's the episode. Thank you for listening. Definitely let me know if there are specific topics for the next 6 episodes that you would particularly like covered. I have some ideas. I'm working on some stuff, but I'm always looking for inspiration and other witchy topics to talk about. Remember, you can follow the podcast at Tutia Bruja. You can follow me at Bexby Caston. Thanks for supporting the show. Thanks for listening. 10 episodes. We out.
I can see you clear.